A Stanford computer science graduate sends out 51 applications in May. 3 automated rejections. 48 just vanish into the void. An Accenture consultant with 5 years of solid performance gets pulled into a meeting. Her manager says the company needs people who can re-skill on AI within 6 months. Retrain or leave. She becomes one of 11,000 people exited by November. A marketing grad with a 3.7 GPA walks into Target, desperate enough to apply for a cashier position after 9 months of silence from every company she ever wanted to work for. The manager tells her they're not really hiring cashiers anymore. The self-checkout lanes handle most of it. None of these are cautionary tales. They're snapshots from right now. Welcome to 2025, where corporate profits hit record highs, the economy hums along nicely, and an entire generation discovers their college degree is worth less than their parents' high school diploma. The economy isn't broken. The entry point just disappeared. By July 2025, 58% of recent college graduates were still hunting for their first real job. Compare that to their millennial and Gen X predecessors. Only 25% struggled this way after graduating. That's not a rough patch. That's a structural collapse. In July, 13.4% of all unemployed Americans were brand new to the workforce, the highest share since 1988. Back then, at least the jobs existed. The average job seeker sent out 45 applications per month in May 2025. Computer science grads are averaging 22 to 51 applications monthly, the most in-demand degree of the decade, and they're still getting ghosted by companies that claim they're desperate for tech talent. Here's the real kicker. Young men with college degrees now have roughly the same unemployment rate as young men who never went to college. Around 2010, that gap was enormous, 15% for non-grads versus 7% for grads. The premium for that $100,000 education? Gone. One word keeps showing up in earnings calls, restructuring announcements, and those carefully worded layoff memos. AI. The World Economic Forum's 2025 report found that 40% of employers worldwide plan to reduce headcount specifically because AI can automate tasks. Not might someday. Can. Right now. Present tense. In just the first 7 months of 2025, 77,999 tech job losses were directly linked to AI. That's 427 people losing jobs to software every single day. Look at the numbers. Intel slashed 33,900 workers, 31% of its workforce. Amazon cut 19,555 positions. Microsoft eliminated 19,215 employees. Accenture, 11,000. IBM, 9,000. These aren't desperate companies bleeding money. These are some of the most profitable corporations in human history. Amazon's senior VP explained the cuts were about becoming leaner in the most transformative technology era since the internet. Read between the lines. Software costs less than people, and we just figured out how to replace a lot more people with software. Accenture's CEO was even more direct. She told analysts they're exiting on a compressed timeline, employees who can't reskill fast enough, not laying off, not downsizing, exiting. Like closing an app you don't need anymore. Want to see the future? Look at what just happened to customer service. By 2027, 71% of customer service executives expect fully autonomous, touchless support. By 2025, 80% of customer service roles will be automated. 2.24 million jobs out of 2.8 million. Just gone. That's not gradual attrition. That's systematic elimination. The math is brutal. AI chatbots save businesses $8 billion annually. When a bot handles customer complaints in 90 seconds, never takes lunch, never gets sick, and costs roughly 50 cents per hour, the CFO doesn't need an MBA to make that call. Salesforce laid off 4,000 customer support roles in September and said AI can now handle 50% of all company work. Not just support, everything. Customer service isn't uniquely vulnerable. It's just first. The canary in the coal mine showing what happens when AI gets good enough to work 8-hour shifts without supervision. Think about every CEO origin story you've ever heard. They love that part where they started in the mailroom, on the factory floor, answering phones. Antonio Neri of Hewlett-Packard began as a call center agent. Doug McMillan of Walmart unloaded trucks as a summer job. Mary Barra of GM started on the assembly line at 18. Those stories aren't just heartwarming anecdotes. They're the foundational mythology of American business. Work hard, start at the bottom, climb the ladder. But what happens when someone removes the bottom rungs? Entry-level job postings have dropped 35% since January 2023. Recent grads are 3 times less likely than previous generations to have a job lined up by graduation. The paradox is obvious. You need experience to get hired, but nobody will hire you to get experience. The door marked entry-level has become a wall. Here's what nobody wants to say out loud. We spent decades convincing kids they had to go to college. Then we automated most of the jobs they trained for. The share of Americans with bachelor's degrees jumped from 25.6% in 2000 to 37.5% today. Between 1993 and 2023, the number of college graduates soared 74.9%, while high school-only diplomas increased just 14%. We created an entire generation of college-educated workers. Then we eliminated their entry points. Now 49% of Gen Z job seekers believe AI has reduced the value of their education, and they're not wrong. More than half of college graduates end up in jobs that don't require degrees within a year of graduating. Even 10 years later, 45% remain underemployed. So they're pivoting hard. 42% of Gen Z are now working in or pursuing blue-collar trades, including 37% who have bachelor's degrees. Among Gen Z men with degrees, that number jumps to 46%. They're not rejecting white-collar work because they don't want it. They're choosing trades because you can't outsource fixing a toilet to an AI that learned to code over the weekend. Dario Amodei runs Anthropic, one of the leading AI companies. He warned that AI could eliminate half of all entry-level white-collar jobs and spike unemployment to 10 to 20% within 5 years. The guy building the technology is sounding the alarm. He says the industry needs to stop sugarcoating what's coming. Mass job elimination across tech, finance, law, consulting, all of it, already happening. Harvard professor Christopher Stanton points out that code for early-stage startups is now routinely written by AI, something impossible just 4 years ago. The shift isn't theoretical. It's not coming, it's here. Right now, 4.3 million young Americans are NEETs, not in education, employment, or training. That's 11% of all young people. These aren't lazy kids who don't want to work. They're people who sent out 500 applications, got 0 interviews, and finally just stopped trying. Over a quarter of all unemployed people have been jobless for 27 weeks or more. Recession-level long-term unemployment, except there isn't a recession. Every technological revolution disrupts labor markets. But AI is different in 3 ways that matter. First, speed. Previous transitions took decades. This one is happening in years. Second, scope. Past automation replaced physical labor. AI replaces cognitive work, the exact thing we told everyone to train for. Third, the entry point problem. When factories replaced farms, you could still get a factory job. When AI replaces entry-level work, there's nowhere to start. Law school applications jumped 33% this year. Students are running back to the classroom, hoping to wait out the storm or build credentials that might make them AI-proof. But here's the thing. The storm isn't temporary weather. It's permanent climate. We're watching the most educated generation in history get told there's no room for them. Not because they didn't work hard enough, not because they made bad choices, but because someone figured out how to do their job with software. So answer this. If entry-level jobs disappear, how does anyone build the experience needed for mid-level positions? If nobody trains the next generation, who runs companies in 20 years? If college degrees no longer lead to jobs, why are we still telling 18-year-olds to take on 6 figures of debt? The response to those questions will determine whether we're watching a temporary market disruption or the beginning of something far more permanent. A future where the traditional career ladder simply doesn't have a bottom anymore.